Hello, and welcome to our third season of ESG Talk. I'm your host, Mandi McReynolds. On behalf of all my co-hosts, I want to say how excited we are to bring you this newest season featuring leaders across environment, social, and governance. Before we officially dive into season 3, we're going to revisit some of our most outstanding moments from season 2. Longtime listeners, you might remember our theme last year was Taking Perspective. We featured a variety of guests that ties into ESG, including corporate executives, thought leaders, advisory partners. Our goal was to offer a diverse array of experts to provide you with a really strong understanding of our current and future landscape of ESG. We hope it helped you find the best solution and path forward for your business and impact on society. Today, you'll hear from Season 2 guests about the value in ESG, the impact of regulation, and how business can tackle the challenges in ESG and reporting. In this first segment, you'll hear from author and popular TED Talk guest speaker Alex Edmans, Todd Brady from Intel, who can forget that incredible episode, Mira Haj from KPMG, and of course, one of my personal favorites, Noel Kinder of Nike. So let's all listen in together.
And there's many executives who have the pie splitting mindset. So they see the pie as fixed, and therefore the best way to increase your profits is to take pie from other people. So cut wages, raise prices, and pay fewer taxes. And that's why you have people who don't like ESG. They claim it's woke because the only way that you can increase the pie to others is if you sacrifice profits. And they're saying, well, profits are important because you need them for a return for investors. But why is the talk called the pie growing mindset is, as the name suggests, the pie can be grown. So when a company invests in its workers, not only through higher wages, but through training and development, they're not just giving pie to the workers, they're not just being charitable, they're growing the pie because the workers are becoming more productive, more motivated, more likely to stay, and therefore shareholders are better off.
And the wonderful thing about energy efficiency is not only does it address our sustainability goals and help reduce our carbon emissions, but it has a tremendous return on investment, return on our capital investment. And we found over and over and over again that many of the projects that we invest in will have a return of 3 years or less on average. That's a tremendous payback. Where else can you get that type of payback? And so you're addressing sustainability goals, you're reducing your carbon footprint, and you're helping your company's bottom line. I mean, that's just the perfect synergy when it comes to sustainability projects.
ESG is here to help drive value for your organization, and there are so many other places that you can be focused on and use that data to help create that value. So one, we're seeing it being written into debt agreements and reducing the percentage of interest that is associated with it when you meet your goals and targets, but you can't prove you've met those goals and targets unless you're collecting that information. We see a lot of tax incentives coming into play now, and so having the opportunity to take advantage of that to power your programs and power the investments that you're making to make that difference is going to be, I think, really transformational in the next 5 to 10 years.
Sustainability is just better business. It makes you more efficient. It makes you consume less. If we think about some of the things that our European team has done in distribution, reconfiguring boxes that go directly to consumers so that we can put more boxes into a shipping container or more boxes into a truck, not only does that lower cost, obviously the cost associated with a smaller box, but it also lowers the carbon footprint because you're transporting more products in a particular container. And so I think that once you start to build that culture within an organization, not only from a product creation standpoint, but from an operating standpoint, you start to see these things build on each other and you realize the business benefit over and over and over again.
Our guests demonstrated that sustainability is a mindset and an opportunity to drive value and fuel growth while strengthening our environment and society. ESG issues are also moving from a largely voluntary disclosure-oriented dimension to a regulatory one, with significant implications for how ESG information is collected, verified, and acted upon within an organization. This led us to a number of conversations about emerging regulation in the US and Europe. In the next few clips, we'll hear from Erin Bigley of AllianceBernstein discussing what's driving the shift from voluntary to mandated disclosure, Then Alison Anderson-Book, the CSO at Baker Hughes, sharing how her team is preparing for compliance. And finally, we'll hear from Amelia Pan of PJT Partners and a member of Workiva's ESG Advisory Council, explaining why the effort will be worthwhile.
I think naturally, as the interest from clients grew around responsible investing, investment managers responded and launched strategies that were either ESG integrated or ESG focused. And investors were touting that ESG nature of their investment strategies. And most of these efforts, many of these efforts are genuine, but there is a risk that some firms' practices may be inconsistent with their statements. And that's what's commonly known as greenwashing. And so for the past couple of years, we've seen a surge in regulations that are designed to combat greenwashing. And while these regulations differ from region to region, at the end of the day, they've got a common goal, which is to make sure that asset managers are doing what they say they're doing.
We, for a while, were focused, like so many US companies, on thinking about what's the SEC going to do, right? Because you're thinking like that's it. Like, as long as we get that and we're compliant in the country in which we're traded, we're good. No, okay, we're not good, because we operate in 89 plus countries, and so all those countries are also thinking like, the EU is doing this and the US is doing this, like, we should think about this. And so now, as countries are thinking about mirroring each other, we find ourselves in a position where we may have to then comply with slightly different standards in many different countries. And so the one that's top of mind for us and for most bigger, Fortune 500 publicly or FTSE companies is that within the EU, it's pretty serious what they passed in the reporting directive. I mean, it's seriously, I'm a former regulator, okay? And I will tell you, like, I used to have some of my colleagues who were like, wow, these are really serious regulations. But what we were requiring, while it was hard, did not have the economic impact that this kind of a rulemaking out of the EU does have, okay? So when we did a comparative analysis between where we're at today, Mandy, and where the directive, and this is without the member state guidance, like the country level, we counted about 1,100 metrics. Today, we have information governance that's analogous in the US to something like SOX level, or like under the current GAAP standard, what you would do for financial reporting. And so we have that over, 250 metrics. And we're like fairly advanced, okay? And we know that we are fairly advanced in how we've had a very systematic approach to layering governance controls, sharing, and all of that stuff. And like, I can't imagine what other companies are thinking when they see that, if they're just getting started. So the single greatest challenge then is knowing that we're ahead, making sure that people understand even internally, that doesn't mean we're going to get to where we need to be in 2 years. And I think for listeners of this podcast, the important takeaway is it's not enough that you're reporting on a certain thing and having governance. You also have to have your third party independent verification. So you've got to transform what used to be it's a very financially driven data ecosystem into something that includes all of these disparate pieces of data that don't even have system of record keeping behind it. So now you're gonna have to build that too, okay? So the more complex your company is, the harder that is to do.
We're moving very quickly from a situation of mass confusion, alphabet soup, despair, to a very streamlined, rigorous, disciplined process where, one day soon we'll have an agreed set of standards, we'll have metrics that are decision useful, we'll have regulations, that span various jurisdictions. And what that will do is it'll help bring transparency to the markets and to company reporting of non-financial and financial disclosures. It'll credentialize sustainability initiatives as valuation relevant, decision useful information. And I think that is a massive silver lining, as painful as it feels right now.
So it's no secret that the increasing scope and complexity of global ESG regulations is daunting. And our season 2 guest had some fantastic advice on how companies can meet these requirements head on. For Nadia Picard of PwC, it starts with leadership. And for Kelly Fisher of HSBC Bank and Charlene Lake of AT&T, if there's ever been a time for finance and ESG teams to finally come together, it's got to be now.
The CEO is the leader of the company, right? So if we talk about strategy, if we talk about performance targets, and then being responsible for achievement of those performance targets, whether they are financial or whether they're a combination of financial and sustainability or only sustainability, it is the CEO who's on the spot and will be responsible to explain this to the outside, to the public. And if the CEO is not convinced about combining strategy with sustainability thinking, it will be hard to get the organization to follow.
For sustainability practitioners who are listening to this, your work is so important. Demand that it be treated with the respect that every other aspect of your business is treated. And for financial professionals who are listening to this needs to be part of your job. And I know you have hard jobs. We're seeing CFOs have the highest turnover of any job right now, according to recent research. But often CFOs are challenged to either think boom times or recession times. You need to be thinking about the ESG times and how that needs to be part of your job and part of the entire C-suite and board.
Recent movement to align with finance actually it's one of the healthiest advancements for this entire discipline that we've ever had. It acknowledges that it's not just a soft science, right? So if we don't manage these issues, they are going to impact our bottom line. So I don't think that all of our CSR or ESG data should go in financial reports. It's not all material, but you have to understand the linkage. You have to understand how this work actually links to healthy finances and successful companies. So that's why we link, for example, our ESG materiality assessment to the company's enterprise risk management, to its investor relations work, to its financial processes. And it works to the benefit of both of us.
Now, our season 2 guests gave us reason to be optimistic about the future of ESG reporting. Many of them shared with us that they're seeing tangible progress by investing in their people, processes, and technology. So in this next segment, we'll hear from Jingdong Hua of the global standard setting body ISSB, followed by Evan Van Hook of Honeywell, Alicia Petras of the Hershey Company, and finally Steve Menacchio of Cisco. And they're going to talk about how they're advancing their company's ESG and sustainability initiatives while also building trust with stakeholders throughout the process.
The message I wanted to share is that my impression of engaging with the corporate side of things is that corporates already recognize that they no longer ask whether they would do ISSB standard or not. That's no longer a question. They are asking, how do we report on scope 3? How do we get our value chain, data collected?
There is so much discussion around, oh, how hard it will be, or, oh, there are parts of the economy for which we have not figured out a solution yet. But that ignores the huge swath of your operations for which there are already solutions. Honeywell has reduced its greenhouse gas intensity already by more than 90%. By definition, that was with existing technology. And so, if I were to say one thing to someone starting out a CSO kind of path, it would be keep your eye on developing technology solutions for those things that are going to be tough, but get started today.
To other leaders who are also doing this work, I'd really recommend that they approach this with the spirit of co-creation. I really believe that we're having some of the successes that you called out because employees across the company are invested in the work. They understand how they can make a personal contribution, and they're really proud of the results that we're seeing and how it's advantaging our commercial business.
Cisco has been voluntarily reporting a number of these metrics and these points for well over 20 years. But the company, and I think humanity as a large, has to view this as really one community, one planet with one objective, really, to get to those, better state environments and a metric and goals that we all want to achieve. I think the connected tissue of working together as people, organizations, and governments is going to be absolutely critical for us to impact change in this area. For me, it comes down to trust in the people, trust in the process, trust in the technology that supports the reporting of climate and other ESG metrics.
We hope you enjoyed this highlight reel from Season 2. At the risk of stating the obvious, as we all settle into 2024, ESG regulation and best practices will only continue to evolve at a rapid clip, and collaboration and transparency will remain as critical as ever. And that's why we've made our theme for Season 3, Strength in Numbers. It's a bit of a play on words. Now, over the course of the next year, we will be focusing on the connections between people and data that are the foundation of ESG. We'll be sharing how business leaders are partnering with other companies and bringing their own internal teams closer together to move their sustainability goals forward. We'll also be hearing from some of the organizations that set the frameworks and standards and policies that hold us all accountable. And finally, we'll be taking a closer look at the role of data and metrics in ESG reporting, how to collect it, how to assure it, and how to report it so that it meets compliance requirements and builds trust with stakeholders. We've got some really incredible episodes lined up, and we can't wait to share them with you. Now, in the meantime, if you've got suggestions for guests and topics you'd like to see us cover this year, please connect with us on Workiva's website or on LinkedIn. And as always, thank you for joining us as we kick off our third season of ESG Talk, brought to you by Workiva, the world's only unified platform for financial reporting, ESG, audit, and risk. Let's talk again soon.